Drones over the Kremlin. Powers under question. What's on the world's agenda this week? Good afternoon, this is Henry Keane on UATV State Channel, explaining hard truth in easy terms for the whole free world directly from Ukraine. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelenskyy arrived in the Netherlands late Wednesday after a brief visit to Finland. Zelenskyy will deliver a speech titled "There is no peace without justice" and visit the International Criminal Court, which issued an arrest warrant in March for Russian President Vladimir Putin over the forced transfer of children to Russia after the Kremlin's invasion of Ukraine. While Vladimir Putin, after missing multiple self-imposed deadlines for capturing Bakhmut, continues to throw more and more Russian cannon fodder into the grinding battle in a desperate bid for something to tout during next week's Victory Day parade in Moscow, that something is the last hope to use the holiday of 9th of May, a day of victory over the Nazi Germany, as a context and a pretext that Putin has always used for as a fancy military party thrown in the name of continuation of his usurped power. Military parade on the Red Square, Putin's beloved show, is supposed to boost the image as a strong man over the course of his decades in power. And what about Zelenskyy? Zelenskyy travels the world. Already in December 2022, Zelenskyy traveled to the United States in a bid to drum up financial and military support, and ever since visited many Western European capitals. This week, Zelenskyy traveled to Helsinki for a summit with Nordic leaders on Wednesday. Thursday's visit to the Netherlands will be Zelenskyy's first to the country since he was elected president. Zelenskyy is also expected to travel to Berlin on May 13th. The reason for all this traveling around the globe is one and the same: to drum up all the international help Ukraine can get these days, to take every dollar possible and spend it purposefully to our victory. Parades can wait. And where Putin goes to? Putin goes to Mariupol. Yes, that very city he has destroyed, where his army killed children, where he is now building decorative installations of life he destroyed. Then Putin would probably return to one of his bunkers, which is a good idea, actually, considering all this agenda flying over the Kremlin. What was it? Ukraine or Russia's self-inflicted FSB action, maybe? Some experts have argued that the alleged drone strike on the Kremlin was internally conducted and purposefully staged by Russia itself. Could be true or not. It just doesn't matter. This way or the other, so much for the effectiveness of Russian air defenses, and as so, those bunkers might just not be the worst idea for Putin. After all, the deeper underground Putin is, the better place the world becomes. Russia, of course, has accused Ukraine of attempting to assassinate President Vladimir Putin. Really? One drone sent to the Red Square, like hoping that Putin will crawl out of his bunker to have a late-night walk across the Red Square or something? President Zelenskyy denied that our country carried out the attack.
You know, I can repeat this message, and I think it will, at least will be understandable for everybody. We don't attack Putin or Moscow. We fight on our territory. We are defending our villages and cities. We don't have, enough weapons for this. That's why we don't use it anywhere. For us, that is the deficit. We can't spend it. And we didn't attack Putin. We leave it to tribunal.
Amen. The Ukrainian president has long urged that Russia's President Putin and the officials who helped bring war to Ukraine must be held accountable by international law. He and other Ukrainian officials have proposed that European leaders set up a special tribunal for that purpose, one that could work alongside the International Criminal Court but bypass its long, onerous prosecution process. During his visit to the Netherlands, Zelenskyy also met Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte. Dutch media said that the two discussed Zelenskyy's demands for more military support, namely long-range weapons and fighter jets, and also voiced some common European values and hopes.
Of course, we all want to see different Vladimir here in The Hague. the one who deserves to be sentenced for these criminal actions right here in the capital of the international law. And I'm sure we will see that happen when we win, and we will win.
Amen to that too. Vladimir Zelenskyy also took quite a bold diplomatic license. He asked that Dutchmen think of his countrymen as well as their own during the kingdom's National Memorial Day for the victims of the Holocaust and World War II. This plea by Zelenskyy during his visit, which coincided with the May 4th Memorial Day, is in line with his broader messaging that juxtaposes Ukraine with the Allied forces of World War II and draws parallels between the year-long Russia's crime of aggression against Ukraine and issues that foreign audiences may find more relatable. In the Netherlands, this message has certainly resonated with audience open to that. Amid growing fatigue in the West of the protracted trench war, it also backfired with a wide array of others, ranging from nationalist politicians to left-leaning Jewish community leaders who objected to what critics view an attempt to piggyback a national commemoration day. Well, those to say this was done by Zelenskyy to piggyback in any way to a national Dutch commemoration day, then using the same logic they can, and actually should, be accused in posthumous humiliation of all the victims of the Russian crime aggression here in Ukraine since 24 February 2022, whom they obviously do not consider worthy for joint commemoration on the same day as the Danes. Rubbish? Well, of course. It is complete rubbish. You see, rubbish is the main driving force of our society. Fools are always ready to be offended even by the most innocent of things, like the fact that the Ukrainian president offered a joint commemoration. I don't know if the term piggyback is right to use in the context of the Jewish community leaders of Denmark, but one thing is clear. Measuring the social weight of whose victims' memory is more valued certainly is not kosher. In any case, gentlemen. Since the 6th of May, the world has had one king more. Buckingham Palace is very English about announcing the event. Buckingham Palace is pleased to announce that the coronation of His Majesty the King will take place on Saturday, 6th May 2023. The coronation ceremony will take place at Westminster Abbey, London, and will be conducted by Archbishop of Canterbury. The ceremony will see His Majesty King Charles III crowned alongside the Queen Consort. The coronation will reflect the monarch's role today and look towards the future, while being rooted in long-standing traditions and pageantry. Further details will be announced in due course. As a concession to time and a sign of pageantry, probably you can share the event of the century on Facebook or Twitter. In the most significant moment of the day, Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, placed the 360-year-old St. Edward's crown on Charles' head. The spiritual leader of the Anglican Church then declared, "God save the King." At Buckingham's Palace, the King and the Queen, accompanied by members of the royal family, appeared on the Buckingham Palace balcony to conclude the day's ceremonial events. First Lady of Ukraine, Olena Zelenska, arrived at the coronation ceremony on Thursday. First Lady visited 10 Downing Street at the invitation of Ashata Murthy, the wife of the Prime Minister of Great Britain. Olena Zelenska also noted another important event, the Conference on Reconstruction of Ukraine, which will be held in London this June. Prime Minister of Great Britain, Rishi Sunak, also joined the meeting.
I'm confident that the conference will significantly speed up the practical implementation of measures to restore Ukraine. We expect concrete results and solutions. Against the background of the importance of providing military aid, the issue of aid to the civilian population is no less important. Reconstruction of hospitals and schools, treatment of the wounded, providing psychological support. Olena Zelenska, First Lady of Ukraine.
Olena Zelenska handed Ashata Murthy an invitation to the third summit of First Ladies and Gentlemen, which will be held on September 6th in Kiev, and will be dedicated to the topic of mental health. First Lady also noted that this event strengthens the role of First Ladies and soft power in the world to improve the lives of various countries and peoples. The First Lady of Ukraine thanked Britain for its support to Ukraine, in particular for organizing the Eurovision Song Contest together with Ukrainian partners. Their Majesties are okay to visit the event just by the way. Ahead of Eurovision 2023, the King and the Queen Consort have visited Liverpool to see how preparations are coming along for the contests, which the UK is hosting on behalf of Ukraine for the first time in 25 years. The history is made before our very eyes, ladies and gentlemen. A self-proclaimed usurper Russian Tsar is about to be deposed by Ukraine with the significant military and humanitarian help of a real King Charles III. Well, glory to Ukraine and long live the King. Remembrance and Reconciliation Day in Ukraine on May 8th. The nation will commemorate all those who fought against Nazism during World War II and all its victims. The heroism of those who resisted and defeated Nazism must always be remembered and honored. Ukraine always was following Europe's approach in commemoration of the Second World War. Remembrance and Reconciliation in Ukraine contrasts sharply with Russia's neurotic abuse of the victory to justify current aggressive policies of the Kremlin. No one can deny Ukrainians played a significant role in the anti-Hitler coalition victory over Nazism and Hitler's allies. The collaboration of two inhuman totalitarian regimes, the Nazis and the Soviets, was the reason that triggered the Second World War. Putin's attempts to appropriate the victory over Nazism and manipulate both its citizens and the international community are obvious. Our emphasis in Ukraine is obvious just as well. No nation can claim an exclusive role in the defeat of Nazism. Putin's Russia is destroying everything it touches, and the post-World War II system of international relations is amongst those things. Russia is undermining international peace and global security by waging the largest continental war of aggression in Europe since World War II. Dictators always seek to satisfy their imperial ambitions through armed force, ultimatums, aggression and annexation. The only way to deal with it is to defeat the aggressor. Another victory is what we need. A victory over a new modern form of fascism, Russism, is what the world needs. Victory that we all will celebrate, and how the victory over fascism is celebrated amongst the nation who suffered Nazist terror probably the most during World War II. We are going to address our questions today to Michael Goldstein. Michael was an academic advisor to Russian-speaking immigrants in Hebrew University of Jerusalem. After that, he served as staff sergeant in Israeli Defense Forces, after which he started his degree in politics and government conflict management and European studies. Since the beginning of the invasion, Michael became a spokesman who is responsible for communication at NGO Israeli Friends of Ukraine and political activist who is taking part in Israeli protests and numerous volunteering missions to Ukraine with humanitarian aid. Good afternoon, Michael.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for joining us today. And my first question, what we in Ukraine and the worldwide now is observing is a transformation of a sort, the celebration, in my opinion, a quantum social transition from celebration to honoring the dead. I mean the 9th of May. From loud festivities, parades, flags and fetishization of the Soviet military paraphernalia to mourning, remembrance and respect for the memory of the dead without national sort of a hysteria, which in Russian is just called patriotism. How true is all that, or the above, for Israel? Is that happening in your country?
Well, it's a process and it takes time, definitely. So this is basically one of the agendas that our NGO, Israeli Friends of Ukraine, promote, is that basically celebrating war is not how it should look like. The Remembrance Day would be more accurate. It would be more fitting, especially concerning the fact that we see the events that we observe today. Israel has a very hard and tough history with fighting Nazism. So there were many Jewish soldiers that fought in the Second World War, more than 1.5 million Jewish soldiers, 500,000 of whom were from the Red Army, and 200,000 of which actually died fighting for the Red Army. The 9th of May became kind of a national holiday in Israel since year 2000. It wasn't always like this. It was an initiative coming from the Russian-speaking community and supported by Russian-speaking members of the Knesset, the Israeli parliament. And there are many movements and veteran associations and different NGOs, groups of interest that actually take part in those celebrations. They still celebrate the 9th of May as they used to do it in the ex-Soviet Union. So yeah, this is one of the things that we believe, especially again concerning the fact that the war goes on right now, that we are trying to promote to move it to the 8th of May. Yeah.
So is it accurate to say that attitude to the May 8th, 9th holiday is not really a holiday itself of a civil society in Israel? Is there sort of a social contract in society, some kind of a agreement on the need to celebrate the day? Let me explain it to clear the fog. Those who don't celebrate, do they not cause misunderstanding or even maybe a rejection on the part of the celebrants or of those who celebrate?
First of all, it's important to make a distinction between the Russian-speaking Israelis and other local communities, because, again, it's a different history. Israel is made up of different waves of repatriates from different parts of the world. And for the Russian-speaking community, definitely is kind of a social contract. But again, since the war started, and I mean 2014 and not 2022, the Russian-speaking community stopped being called a Russian-speaking community. I specifically am happy to see that, because there's a new distinction between people coming from different parts of the next Soviet Union, and they treat this social contract differently. So definitely since the total invasion of 2022, I do not expect to see Ukrainian-speaking communities celebrating the 9th of May the way they used to. So it's a process that we undergo right now. It's a changing thing.
All right, thank you very much for your answer. Emil Shleimovich, the Details edition editor-in-chief, whom I interviewed just yesterday. When I asked him this question, he said, yes, absolutely. The question is, our political establishment of Israel, a government and senior officials and the nation of Israel, the society as such, hold opposing views on events in Ukraine. I will explain myself. While Israeli civil society expresses unequivocal support for Ukraine, the government and politicians play with terms and do everything that is possible to avoid, calling a spade a spade. I'm not talking about the fact that all Moscow propaganda channels continue to broadcast in Israel completely freely. Is it true? Is there such separation between society and government in Israel?
Emil Shleimovich is definitely right. There is. He said a true thing. There are also conflicts among politicians and among the Israeli local society. So there are members of parliament that did many great things to help our movement, to help accepting Ukrainian refugees coming to Israel, to help promote the humanitarian aid processes, and so on and so forth. And there are many members of parliament who actually insist on remembering the difficult history that Ukraine had with the Jewish community throughout different periods in history. And it's important to address those issues too. But yeah, there is a distinction. Mostly the help coming from Israel to Ukraine usually comes from the community, from the society, from NGOs, from different organizations and private initiatives, but less from the government, unfortunately. So yeah, there is still this problem.
What are your private plans for this day? Personal plans, I mean.
I never had any. I do understand the importance of moving it to the 8th of May. I do think that Remembrance Day, and not the celebration, it's a day when you have to think again. It's a Remembrance Day, so you should remember things that I, being like a younger generation, I cannot remember, but I can read about them, I can think about them, I can educate people, which partly is, again, what Israeli Friends of Ukraine are trying to do on 8th of May for the second year straight, is to educate the local public about what is actually what is being remembered. And yeah, it's very important to use this day as a platform to promote, giving everything you can to avoid this thing happening again, which is something that unfortunately we see nowadays. It's not the same scale, but it is a war. It is a total war, and this Remembrance Day is something that is very useful and important to promote this idea that we should fight with such with those things again and again and again.
Thank you. Ukraine was forced to be reborn in the flames of this war. We need to resist Russian armed aggression, and Europe and the collective West, so-called, need to oppose soft Russian power in particular. In the Baltic countries, it is especially clearly, for example, and it is visible what kind of measures are being taken, if taken any, by Israel in the context of countering Putin's regime and protecting, actually, from attempts to influence the country's foreign and domestic policy.
Well, as I said before, politicians and community-wise are two different worlds here in Israel, right, especially nowadays when we see like political movements going to the streets and protesting different laws and the government as a whole. But politically wise, I think that Israel is not doing enough to distance itself from Russia. It's partly because of the security issues that are, well, again, if you if people study a bit about the history of the Middle East in the like 75 years since Israel became a country, it's pretty understandable why is it so. It doesn't justify, but it's still like there is a historical basis for that. Israel is trying to distance itself from Russia, but in a very slow pace, so that Israel's own security interests in both Syria and Iran and Lebanon and so on and so forth are not jeopardized by those ideas. So basically, when the new government came to power in previous year, the policy of talking about Russia-Ukraine war was publicly announced as we speak less about it. We do not make any big steps, at least publicly. So there are things that we know that are actually happening. So they installed the alert system in Kiev, which started working yesterday, which, again, I really hope will help. And humanitarian aid initiatives are really great. But again, this is like the play between like not jeopardizing the security interests of Israel in the Middle East, but still supporting the, let's call it as it is, the right side of this war, which is definitely Ukraine.
Ukraine is now on the edge of a, let's call it a spear of fate, if you want it, and it defends not only its right to free choice and existence itself, but also rights for universal democratic values as such, to my opinion, at least, as far as the statement is supported by the Israeli society. Is it supported, and or the political establishment is more or less clear?
It is definitely supported when you look at it. I'm really glad that Israeli media showed this war, at least they used to do it in the beginning of the war, as it is. So they did not say that it's a local conflict or something like this. They from the very beginning, they said that Russia attacked Ukraine. And when you see those things in the news, and after the atrocities of Kiev region, like Bucha, Irpin, Gostomel, and when it moved further on into Kherson, and so on and so forth, you can hear the public speak, and I try to listen to it more and more. They definitely support the Ukrainians, and they do see it as an attempt to fight for the right to exist as a nation. There's some kind of an existential conflict between like supporting Ukraine in its fight for independence and the right to exist as a nation state, but remembering the history that some of the locals talk about a lot lately, especially lately, with Ukrainians being controversial to Jews in different parts of history again. So it's definitely actually part of the propaganda that comes from the Russian embassy directly, because you choose what to remember. So you can remember that there were Ukrainians fighting against the Jews in different parts of history, or you can remember that there were people who saved lots of Jews in the Second World War coming from Ukraine, and Ukraine is actually a fourth place in the world with the number of those people saving the Jews. So again, the community does support, the community does see it as Ukrainians' will to survive and to exist and to develop being a democratic country. But there's a discussion about it in different matters. Yeah.
Yeah, we heard that. Last question for today, Michael. What do you think personally? Russian propaganda, Russian broadcasting, should it be stopped in Israel? Do you think is that is the case? That is what it should happen?
Oh, definitely. There's again this controversy between like the free speech and the freedom of media and not allowing propaganda to spread. Actually, one of the things that really surprised me in the beginning, which happened, was one of the main propaganda famous like people that appear a lot in Solovyov's program is Yaakov Kedmi. He's an Israeli kind of a like politician, not politician, but let's call him like a social, like pretty important person basically to politics. He was one of the heads of one of a very important governmental branches. And he was fired from one of the media assets based on basically his propaganda ideas that he was spreading throughout the Israeli community. So at some point, they did understand that propaganda is that Israel does not want to be a place for propaganda and for promotion of war. But there are many things that were not done yet to deal with it. And again, this is one of the main agendas of our NGO today. So Israeli Friends of Ukraine are trying to keep in contact with local media about what's actually going on in Ukraine, because they do not talk about this properly. They do not talk about this every day, and things happen every day. So when Uman happened, like less than a week ago, they talked about it because Uman is a very important city for the locals. They talked much less about Dnipro when it happened. They talked much less about Kremenchuk. So people stop thinking about it, and people might ask me today what the war's still going on. Is it still happening? Because we do not hear about it much. So this is, yeah, partly because they simply get used to it, and partly because Russian propaganda does everything to avoid us thinking about it as much as we want to. So yeah, 100%, if you ask about my personal opinion, I do believe that propaganda should be fought against as good as possible.
Thank you very much, Michael, for your time and for your efforts at Israeli Friends of Ukraine. We hope to see you soon in our channel. And we have definitely a lot of more questions for you, but we just don't have enough time for that because the war is going on. And thank you very much and hope to see you soon on our webs. We had Michael Goldstein on UATV State Channel and me, Henry Keane, and our gorgeous team trying to break the hard truth in easy terms for the whole free world directly from Ukraine. Stay safe and tune for more. And now a minute of righteous explanation, some more on UATV. Users Evangelangelo 8761 and Romeo B 8369 are asking questions that are very close to each other by their respective nature, and that nature is being so far away from the objective European and Ukrainian reality that it deserves an explanation. Evangelangelo 8761 asks, how is a victory for Ukraine a victory for the entire world? Many people in the USA need to be educated about this. And Romeo 8369 is like, give me one reason why we, especially the West, should care for Ukraine. I'll give you guys 3 reasons, one practical, one judicial, and one moral, so you can have your choice. The first practical reason why you should care for Ukraine is survival. Putin is a delusional maniac wielding his nuclear gavel. So the world gets to choose. Either Putin is stopped at a lesser cost of helping Ukraine to win, or the last Soviet emperor will go on his quest for reanimating the monstrosity of Soviet empire, and then your NATO safety is not that guaranteed anymore. The war, even if a cold one, is protected for decades, and its costs multifolds and skyrockets. Or, now, by Ukraine's hand, the United States can finally, once and for all, get rid of its long-time adversary while simultaneously testing its military equipment and firepower in a real combat on a real battlefield without having a single American soldier setting foot on it. And I'm not even mentioning that the US is not just an opportunity, but a blessing, really. Second reason is the reason of law. The West should care for Ukraine because this care sends a crucially important message to any dictator wannabe in the world. Your crimes will not go unpunished. No one is above the law. You will be held accountable for them, will be judged. You will become an international outlaw. The punishment is inevitable. Third reason is a moral one. The victory for Ukraine is a victory for the entire world, and the world should care for Ukraine because the cost and the value are 2 different things. You see, the cost is just an expense that is replenishable. The value is not. The value is priceless. It cannot be undermined. If the world says it values justice, law, democracy, and freedom, and these are global prevailing values for all, and NATO is the protector and the guarantee of it, then so be it. Global and prevailing values for all. If these values are prevailing only for the privileged part of the world, which safety is guaranteed by NATO, but it would not really want NATO to help to defend these values elsewhere in the world but its own backyard, then these are not values, but a trivia. And it sends a completely backwards message to all the dictators of the world. Kill, rape, murder, shell civilians, kidnap children, anywhere in the world but that very backyard. If that is what you want, then indeed you should cut your costs and expenses by not caring about Ukraine and not helping us to win the war where we spill our blood for our global human values and sit back and enjoy your safety. For now, because dictators never stop, and the fence of your safe backyard will crumble and will shrink brick by brick, country by country. This is the cost of undermining the values, you see. And if you want to try to build a worldwide safety and just order where dictatorship and autocracy are not welcome, then you are welcomed to help Ukraine to do it for you. Thank you. It was Henry Keane on UATV State Channel. I hope I brought some more hard truth in easy terms for you, dear free world, directly from Ukraine. Like us and comment, ask your question. We will pick one for the next answer. Stay safe and tuned for more already next week.